Okay, welcome to BP, the Bible Perspective. And Pastor Greg Laurie has tested positive for COVID-19. And he asked the question in the interview, he made the statement that he doesn't know why God allowed him to get COVID-19. He doesn't know why God allowed him to get COVID-19. Okay, as you can see by my thumbnail, I think Christians need to wake up. Christians need to wake up. Before we get into this, let me again ask to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And if you have a thought or comment, as always, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. Now, I'm not surprised or shocked that Pastor Greg Laurie contracted COVID-19. Many people who were in attendance at the same event, the Rose Garden event, where President Trump announced the Supreme Court nomination, okay, of Anne, I forgot her last name, okay. So a lot of conservative Christians were there. To them, this is the win, okay. I'm not going to get into the politics of that. But here is what is interesting about this. That was one of the events that I believe that became a super spreader, and it spreaded. I think some 25 people from the White House have now since tested positive for COVID-19, including the president himself and his wife, and several of his top aides. Now we even get reports of and a few of the high-ranking officials in the Pentagon have tested positive for COVID-19. Okay, so look, the reason why I'm going to focus on Pastor Greg Laurie, and for those who don't know who he is a Calvary Chapel pastor. He came out from under the tutelage of the late Chuck Smith. Chuck Smith started Calvary Chapel. There are some over, I think, 1,500 Calvary Chapel affiliate churches. The home-based church is in Costa Mesa, California. Greg was one of the first generation of pastors who were influenced by Pastor Chuck Smith. Pastor Chuck Smith began to teach verse by verse through the entire Bible, and and actually this he began to teach verse by verse through the entire Bible, and Greg was as was a few of these Calvary Chapel people. They were hippies, just doing the hippie movement back during the 60s. And Greg was one of them. He would go on to start his church, which now is a mega church in Riverside, California. Greg ministries different somewhat from Pastor Greg in that Greg's ministry was more evangelical. So when you think about Greg, you can almost put him in a kind of category with a Billy Graham and some of the other conservative evangelicals or evangelists. So that's kind of his lane. Okay, he's not active in politics, but certainly, for example, for him to be at the White House is not a surprise. I don't consider him in the same category as some of the other zealous Trump supporters. Okay, I would say he's conservative without a doubt, and then I would say that he is um, neutral, more neutral. Okay. So another well-known pastor tested positive, John Hagee. I'm not. I don't know if he was at this event either. Um, and of course, we still don't know who was um, yet to come, because there were several evangelical leaders. Here is my point, however, about Greg in the statement that he made. He doesn't understand why God allowed him to get it. Well, here's the problem. God will allow you to run into the middle of the street and get run over by a car. God would allow you to jump off a building. God would allow you to get addicted to drugs, and then eventually that be your demise. I mean, we could go on and on and on in the sense to say God would allow you to do certain things. When you say, "But God, why did God allow me?" Well, wait a minute. Let's tell the story about, and there are many versions of these kinds of stories, but I'm going to tell you the one that I heard about. The guy whom God didn't save from the flood. Well, there was a flood coming, and there was a news report that said, hey, this is going to be a real bad storm. It's going to flood. You need to take precautions. You need to evacuate. Well, there was the one guy who was stubborn, and he said, God is going to save me. Well, the rain started to fall, and the water started to rise up. A guy came by in the car, right? Sheriff said, hey, man, you need to evacuate. You can see the water starting to flood. He says, God taking care of me. God is going to save me. Well, the waters kept going, kept flooding. All of a sudden, as the waters get up to waist, shoulder height, guy came by in a boat and said, hey, get in the boat, man. It's flooding. And God said, hey, no, God's going to save me. God's going to save me. Well, the waters kept flying, and finally he was at the roof level. Helicopter came by. He said, hey, guy, with the bullhorn, hey, dropping a ladder. Get on. We're going to save you. The water is at your roof. God says, no, God's going to save me. Well, the waters kept going, and eventually the guy drowned. And then in heaven, okay, in heaven, he said, Lord, I thought you was going to save me. Why didn't you save me, Lord? And the Lord said, son, you had the news reports. I sent a boat. I sent the sheriff. I sent the boat. I sent the helicopter. You see, this is the kind of, I think, kind of lunacy that we're living in with Christians today. Remember, we got Christians who are demanding that they gather together, right? Gather together in worship with no mask, with no social distancing. They want to worship, despite the fact that we know we're 9 months, going into 10 months, into a world pandemic called COVID-19. We know enough information to know now how this virus is spread. We know what it does. It attacks the respiratory system through one person by a affected person who sneezes, coughs. The droplets in the virus attaches in the droplets of a sneeze in your saliva or whatever, right? And you ingest that into your system. Despite all of this simple, plain knowledge, you have people, and I'm going to say now Christians, who are trying to act as if this doesn't happen. We're trying to act as if you don't have this virus. We're trying to act as if, hey, that, and again, I don't understand this. Why did Greg Laurie get COVID-19? Why did God allow Greg Laurie to get COVID-19? Because Greg Laurie went to a gathering where he didn't wear masks, despite that he knew to wear masks, that he did not social distance, despite that he knew to social distance. And someone there had COVID-19, and it spread, and he got